When we go through a big change in life, whether it's by choice or whether it's something that's been forced upon us, there's going to be a time where there's a conflict between the old version of ourselves and the new version of ourselves, which is trying to emerge. It's almost like the new version of ourselves is being suffocated by the old version. Because the old version feels comfortable, it's familiar, it's what we're used to. There's literally patterns associated with that, patterns of behavior, patterns of being, patterns of holding ourselves, of speaking. Literally everything we've done and everything we've been doing is very comfortable. We know what to expect. We know where we stand. There's so many different aspects to it, not just the one change which has taken place. But the issue comes when we try to maintain an identity which is no longer us. So there's been a big change, but we're just carrying on as if nothing's happened, or we're nostalgic about who we used to be, or we're trying to get back to where we were before without acknowledging the new us, the new me that's trying to emerge. And this often happens at certain times in life. So midlife crisis is often talked about. That tends to happen between the ages of about 40 and 50. And this is often more of a conscious thing where the person experiencing midlife crisis has been living their life a certain way up to a point, and then suddenly they realize that's not important to them anymore. It's not what they want to do. Maybe it's no longer aligned with values. Maybe values have changed. Or maybe priorities have changed. So maybe a career, which was once important, just doesn't seem to have the same meaning anymore. There's also nervous breakdown, which people talk about. So this is more happens when people have been under too much stress, whether that's work stress or from stress from family or any kind of situation really. But tends to be when people, again, are not aligned with their authentic self. So they're acting in a certain way, but it's not aligned with their values or who they are at the core. I'll also mention spiritual awakening because that is something which has happened to me, which wasn't something that I was prepared for. And this maybe is something that might not happen to everybody, but I think some people do have more spiritual tendencies and a need to express themselves spiritually. And this can happen because society puts so much focus on our mental health, emotional health, and physical health. And I'd even put emotional health as kind of less important through the eyes of society. But spiritual health isn't really talked about. It's seen more as an add-on to our life, rather than something which needs to be incorporated into actually who we are. So when this is denied or suppressed or isn't expressed in the way it needs to be, this can cause a spiritual awakening, which when it's a crisis could also be considered maybe a midlife crisis or a nervous breakdown or even an identity crisis. So when this happens, when we get into the situation where there's a new us and an old us, and there's a conflict, there needs to be a choice about, are we going to try and choose comfort over truth? The comfort of the old life over the truth of who we've now become. The old self feels safe. There's certain roles that we've fulfilled, whereas the new self, there's a fear of the unknown. It's unfamiliar. It's going to make us step into all sorts of situations, environments, and feelings even, which are not familiar and not comfortable. But when we can express ourselves fully and authentically, whether this new identity is our choice or not, it enables us to find peace. So there's a lot of stress goes into maintaining an identity which isn't really ours. But when we don't need to do that anymore, it frees up a lot of mental energy, physical energy, emotional energy, and spiritual energy, which we can then invest into other things. If this resonates with you and you're finding yourself in a situation where you're kind of between two worlds, I'd suggest audit your environment. What are you clinging on to which no longer serves you? What friends or people do you have in your life that you need to let go of? What routines are you in which are no longer helpful? Can you create new routines which will anchor your new identity? So what can you do which would enable you to express yourself from that new identity? For me personally, for example, I found suddenly that I had a kind of very strong spiritual aspect to my personality, which I hadn't really known about. So I started going on courses and meeting quite a few people on these courses who I could speak freely to. And it enabled me to then get comfortable with this new part of my identity, which seems so unfamiliar. So when it comes to this, the door is open. We just need to walk through it.